Who wants to be the next Italian wine ambassador? Join an exclusive network of 400 Italian wine ambassadors across 48 countries. Vinitaly International Academy is coming to Chicago on October 19th to 21st, and to Almaty, Kazakhstan from November 16th to 18th. Don't miss out. Register now at vinitaly.com.
Benvenuti! Welcome to the next generation with me, your host, Giulia Stocchetti. Join me as I take you on a journey to discover young stars of the Italian food and wine world. Pronti? Andiamo! Hello! Hi everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of The Next Generation on the Italian Wine Podcast. This is me, your host, Giulia, and today there's here with me in the podcast booth George Michael. Well, not the singer, but my colleague on the Italian Wine Podcast team.
Hi, I understand the confusion a lot, but yeah, it's just me, an intern at Italian Wine Podcast, Mama Jumbo Shrimp, and I'm very happy to be here.
Oh yeah, and since he's been part of the podcast family, and since he's been enthusiastically exploring Italian wine and cuisine lately, and its influence on the Maltese food culture, I couldn't help but interviewing him today. So, as you can guess, George Michael is from Malta, actually from Gozo, one of the best places ever in the world. It's like a piece of heaven, really. But I want George to talk about this.
Yeah, so I've been in Italy now for like a year, almost a year and a half now. I came here to do my master's in Bologna. I spent a year there. It was really nice. And then I'm here in Verona to do my internship. I've been here for like a month now, and I'm going to be here till the end of November at least. And I'm just really enjoying the experience, exploring the cuisine, exploring the wine, really getting into the wine industry. But yeah, originally I'm from Malta, as you said. Malta, for those people who may not know, especially for, the Italians, it's an island just under Sicily. We're our own country, we're fully independent, but we have a lot of different influences. So geographically, we're right in between North Africa and Italy. So, you get a lot of influences in the people that are there, the culture, the traditions, and also more importantly, the food. However, yeah, we're right under Italy, so we have a lot of influences in wine and in food from Sicily. So traditional, Sicilian food, Southern Italian food. And I'm really excited to talk about that more in detail.
Yeah, me too. My mouth is already watering. I want to try everything at the end of the episode as usual. But so how would you describe Maltese cuisine to someone who has never tried before?
I would firstly describe it as a really nice fusion of hearty, cozy comfort food, but really fresh as well. So there's two types of it. So it depends a lot and comes a lot from the geography, okay? So we're an island, so we rely a lot on the fresh ingredients coming from fish and also some of the local meat like rabbit. And we also have that Mediterranean influence. So a lot of salads, a lot of nice sandwiches using fresh ingredients. And coming from Sicily as well and the rest of Italy, we have a lot of ingredients, for example, like giardiniera, like tuna, a lot of heavy emphasis on tomatoes, and we'll see it both used, for example, one of the most classic sandwiches you can get is the ftira, the classic Maltese ftira. And now, don't be confused because there are two types of Maltese ftira. One of them is this sandwich. So it's like a flat bread, which then, you make into a sandwich, you cover it with tomato paste, then with olive oil, extra virgin olive oil to really get the best experience. Then just salt, pepper, and you can add other stuff if you want, but that's the traditional way. And then tuna, canned tuna, and then you can just add anything you want. Usually it's with capers, with olives, with giardiniera. Even some people add fresh tomatoes as well to add more to that freshness. And then a very important core ingredient that there is as well is the jbena. So the jbena, it is goat cheese, and you will see them as these little cheeselets that are made very locally, especially where I'm from Gozo. So my tiny little island is very known for them. And they come in different ways. They come either fresh and completely plain, so to speak. And these will be kind of similar to a ricotta texture, like very light, very creamy, a bit sweeter than ricotta though, not as salty. And then the hard version of the same jbena, you can either find it plain or you can either find it peppered. So for example, my father does a lot of these as well. So he gets the fresh jbena and then dries it and then covers it with a bunch of seasonings, especially pepper, and then just, puts it in a container, let it age a bit. And it really has this strong, like, peppery flavor, not spicy, but this really, like, deep, rich flavor of pepper, which is almost too strong to have on its own. So that's why then we cut it up and you put it in this Maltese the sandwich I mentioned before. And it really makes for a nice experience because you have all these fresh ingredients, but then there's also this kick of that salty, really like strong, deep, complex flavor.
Sounds like a perfect dish for the season. It's summer, it's warm, and with tira you're gonna have something fresh, something tasty and rich and delicious, but still that keeps you fresh without being too heavy and just, right for the summer season. But your dad is a cheesemaker.
No, he's not a cheesemaker, so...
He's like a cheese affineur.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
But on the side, he does all these things. In reality, he owns a gym, actually, in Gozo. But on the side, he has all these things with food because, food is always there. And it's a big part of our tradition, big part of our families, of our culture, and of our way of life. And for example, our family has a farm, like a big farm, not just like a garden in the backyard, but a big farm that's been in the family, for generations, 4 or 5 generations. And he gets all the fresh produce from there. So for example, olives even, he makes them from scratch. He harvests them from his own farm, and then he adds the brine, he adds the herbs, and then lets them age, lets them, develop the flavors, and then that's something we can have the year after. And as well, have it with the same tira, or, cut it up and have it on a pizza. And the same for the cheese, getting from local producers, from friends, getting the fresh cheese. And then he just, spends time, he enjoys it, like filling up these little jars with different cheeseless, different jbenas, adding his own seasonings, giving his own spin on it. Yeah, but at the heart, it's still like very Maltese, very Godsden even. And it's just something, you always find people that have, food as something that they do on the side, but which they love very much.
Yeah, your dad is like the personification of mens sana in corpore sano. I mean, he grows his own food basically in the farm, and then he works out in the gym. So, wow, that's the perfect life in a perfect place on earth. So, you should miss a bit Malta.
I do. Especially, it's funny because I love exploring cuisine so much. I love exploring new food. Italy as well, of course. One of the main reasons for choosing where I did my master's was Bologna itself, because, in Italy...
Because of the food?
Yes. In Italy, it's known as one of the capitals of food, because they have such a rich history and they have, such a dynamic food scene. Everything like lasagna coming from there, ragu coming from there, ragu bolognese, the cotoletta bolognese coming from there, tortellini in brodo. They have so many iconic dishes, and it's something I always felt familiar with. So that's, something which attracted me a lot to Italy. But having said that, being here, I realized how much I miss kind of like the cuisine of back home, the freshness of back home, because like I told the other day, there are some things that you cannot even find in the restaurants. So some of these things, like the most popular stuff, you will find, but there are so many like local dishes that you will only find at home or at your nonna. Nonna is the word for nonna, by the way.
Nonna is the grandma, basically.
Yeah.
It's so close to Italian. So like Italy has such a strong influence on Maltese cuisine and also Maltese culture, I guess. What other cultures influence Malta?
Geographically, we're influenced a lot by Northern Africa. So not necessarily maybe in our culture, but even the people, we're loud people, even the way that they speak, even similar to Southern Italy. But then these home-cooked foods that we have, they use the local ingredients, for example, like the broad beans, the peas, stuff that, we have always grown here and we didn't have to import. but they do them in a style which is very hearty, you know? It's like stews, like heavy stews, and not even using tomatoes sometimes, so going away from Italy, but just relying on the flavor of the vegetables like cauliflower, like peas, the broad beans, and just creating a nice stew with it and kind of blending it with what we have on our island as well. So again, for example, we have this one which is called couscous. It's kind of similar to couscous, but it's like these little small pasta balls, very small, almost bigger than couscous, which are just cooked into this kind of like broth more so, and then it thickens up into a nice stew. And then you use the broad beans and the peas and the cauliflower to make this really nice stew. And then you top it off at the very end with the jbena, the cheese, and also an egg. And you just let it cook in there, and it comes almost like a poached egg in it. And it's just a really nice combination of everything that really makes us Maltese. And I feel that's really coming from, you know, more Northern African influences. But yeah, I feel like Italy really is at the forefront of our influences in Malta in terms of food and obviously in the culture and all of that.
So nice. Now I realize why when I was in Malta, I didn't have these specialties you're talking about, because basically it's food that you cook at home. Because I guess it takes a lot of time. And is there any cookbook where you can find these receipts and try to make it home? Or it's just, you know, up to the family? There's this recipe that is being, told from the grandma to the mom and then to...
Now, of course, the best recipe that you will find is from the grandma, is from the mom. But if you look up online, like there's a bunch of recipe books that are made, because especially in the last, I'd like to say 10 years, we've really, you know, grown more of an appreciation for our culture and our food. And we realized that there's not many restaurants, because as you said, it takes a long time to make these dishes, so it's not very possible to have them in restaurants. And they're very specific to the season, you know, they're very like wintry dishes. So for all the tourists that come in summer, they're not going to have a plate of couscous, they're not going to have a estofat, a stew. So you'll find a lot of resources. There's been cookbooks made and recipe books made, which you can easily find online. But even looking up, you'll have a bunch of blogs, even... It's so cute. I found them as well, like while doing my, you know, more in-depth research for this episode. I found even immigrants, people from Malta that went abroad to Australia or to Canada, because it happened a lot in the 80s. They just went outside, you know, for work, and now they still live there. I have cousins, I have 3 different aunts, you know, with 3 generations after them of cousins still living in Canada and Australia. But what is so interesting is that even from there, they're writing their blogs, they're, you know, posting the Maltese recipes, the classic
beautiful.
Maltese recipes, keeping it at heart and making sure to be proud of their culture. However, one dish that you will definitely find everywhere in Malta is the pastiz. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. But
No, never. What is this?
It's the most iconic kind of like pastry street food you can get. So it's a savory pastry. It's this really nice flaky pastry, sfogliata, as you say in Italian. So a lot of layers of pastry that come really crispy in the oven. And then it's filled with either ricotta, so ricotta cheese, or peas. This kind of nice spicy, almost not too spicy, but it has that kick to it, you know, like the pea filling. And then a lot of people as well add some bacon into it or add some pancetta into it to give it that more, you know, deep, rich flavor, that salty flavor. So those are the 2 more traditional kind of type of pastiz. And you will literally find them anywhere. Something that's very common in Malta, similar to Italy, where you have, you know, the pizzerias, where you can get the pizzeria al taglio. In Malta, we have the pastizzerias, where you can get, yes, and you find them all over the street. And it's like a nice street food that you can just, you know, pass by. It's so funny because we have a running joke in Malta, because people will literally just stop their car in the middle of the street, turn on the hazard lights, and go to the pasticceria.
No way.
Yes. And just to buy like 5 pastizzi for the road and then back in their car and drive on. But then at these pastizzerias, you will find, you know, the pastizzi, but you also find these traditional Maltese pizzas that we have. So again, imagine the pizza al taglio, but it's made different. It's kind of very light and fluffy, similar to a focaccia. And the most traditional one you will find is just tomato sauce, mozzarella, and then olives on it, which is really nice because, you know, you can taste the brine of the olives, but then also with the sweetness of the tomato and with the saltiness of the cheese, it really makes for a nice simple pizza. And then besides that, at these pasticcerias, you will also find the timpana, which might sound similar to the timballo, which is mostly popular, I think, in Sicily, which is a very traditional dish there. But here we kind of adapted and improvised to make it this like pie. So imagine just short crust pastry, but instead of, you know, vegetables or meat, it will be filled with more pasta.
Oh.
Yeah, so it will normally be rigatoni, then done with a nice ragu sauce. So people normally go for the bolognese sauce, but sometimes they shake it up, you know, add some pancetta in there or add some bacon. And then you cook it like you will be cooking normal pasta. Then at the very end, you just add some eggs and then you pop it into the short crust pastry, cover it up, and then into the oven. It comes really nice. And this is a dish, for example, that I would have for Sunday lunch, you know, that my mom would make and everyone would enjoy. But you can also find it in these pasticcerias, you know, you just get one slice like this, like really big, for
Wow.
like €2, and then you're done. You're done for your meal.
Sounds delicious, and it reminds me like of our pasta al forno. But
Yeah.
the Maltese version, I would say, is richer than our pasta al forno, but sounds so delicious. Oh my God. I didn't know you had so many specialties on the small island, but I was wondering, like, the ingredients mostly come from the island, or you have to import some of them?
So if you look at the main local dishes, you know, the most traditional icons of Malta, so these are things that have been around for so long, you know, dishes that relied on our local ingredients. So everything, as you may notice, is very heavy on tomatoes, for example, or the local dishes, like I said before, using the peas, the cauliflower, or for example, a version of the Italian pizza that we have is called a ftira. So this is the other ftira, not the sandwich, but now it's a pizza. I don't know why it's the same word, I'm not sure, but this one especially is the Godston ftira. So, you know how there's two islands? The Maltese people from the main island would always come to Gozo for these two specific, you know, bakeries that make these traditional Godston ftiras. They know them by their name. They know that if they're going to Gozo for a weekend or for a day, they're going to pass by this bakery and get a ftira. And they're always so busy. So this ftira is like, imagine a normal pizza base, but maybe a bit not harder, but the crust will be crunchier, you know, it will be firmer, it has a nice crunch to it. It's not as doughy, for example, as Neapolitan pizza, but it will be as thin. So it'll be like thin, crispy at the edges, like that. And then, instead of a normal tomato-based sauce or instead of a normal mozzarella, it would be mostly covered in thinly sliced potatoes, which would come really soft and almost melt in the oven. And then it would be covered with more fresh ingredients. So, for example, fresh tomatoes instead of the tomato sauce. You would also have the capers, the olives, and the tuna, or if you prefer with the anchovies, which really makes for a nice, you know, it's kind of like the pizza version of the sandwich that I said before. But then there's also a version with the cheese and with the sausage. So it's the local Maltese cheese and Maltese sausage, okay? So it would be again covered with the potatoes, but then it would be covered with the harder Maltese jbena, normally the peppered one to have that extra flavor. And then there would also be the Maltese sausage.
What is it?
Now, again, this is something, like you asked before, this is something very local to Malta. So it's mostly a pork sausage. That's how you normally find it, just pork. And it's very garlicky, very salty, and it has a heavy, strong taste of coriander as well. So that's kind of like the main herb in it. And it is served, some people eat it raw, although I wouldn't recommend, that's the very traditional way of doing things. But normally it's baked into things. So it's either fried on its own and it comes very salty and very nice. You almost have to eat it with something else because it's a bit too salty. But then a lot of people either, you know, put it in a sandwich, or one of the traditional ways is on this ftira, the pizza. So you'd have it, the potato, the jbena, and then the Maltese sausage. And it would be really nice, that, you know, that blend of the meat, the cheese, the potato, the pastry, you have everything in there that you want. and it makes for such nice flavors.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kaleidoscope of flavors and of emotions too, because I guess like when you bite and you have this like, piece of tira in your mouth, you feel so joyful and so happy and so satisfied. Oh my God. That sounds really, really super delicious. And by the way, you're still talking about food. And so like my mind is on food and wine pairings, like what kind of wine would be good with this, with that. And until now, I can say that some Lambrusco will pair pretty well, like with your kind of tira and like the easy version. I mean, not the pizza tira, but the first one we're talking about. But also like talking about tomatoes and capers and mozzarella, my mind went straight like to Campania. I don't know if you know, but like on the Vesuvio, they grow up to 30 different kinds of tomatoes. So yes, I was thinking about like some capretone, but like in still and sparkling versions. And yeah, then going to Sicily with especially like the small island of Pantelleria with the capers and stuff. I was thinking about some Zibibo and its dry versions, or even it's a Sharma versions could be really, really nice too. But I mean, I don't know if in Malta you have some interesting wines, if you make some wines actually on the island or not.
Yeah, so in Malta there's actually a good amount of wineries. There's 5 main wineries, which are kind of, the biggest staples in Malta.
So you drink wines on the island?
Yes,
nice.
Yes, of course.
Cool.
Obviously, since we're so close to Italy, we get to enjoy a lot of the Italian wines since they're imported here really easily. But in terms of local Maltese wines, there are 2 indigenous grape varieties. One is the Gellosa, which is a red, and the other is Argentina, which is a white. And these are the only 2 kind of ones that are local from Malta and that came from Malta, so they're very close to our hearts. But there's a very strong wine culture as well in Malta. We have a number of wine festivals that happen throughout the year. And for example, my strongest memories from even Gozo would be from my mother's hometown, where there will be this annual wine festival in September, where there would be so many local wines and local wine producers, but also a bunch of, foreign wines that would be important. And it's, like a normal wine festival. You go there, you pay, you get your glass, and then you go around the different stalls and taste the different wines.
Also in Italy, we have some festivals like that where you can just go and you grab your glass, paying a ticket, of course, or whatever, and then you can just go and tasting. So these wine events are quite popular, and usually there's also some food, not just wine, but it depends. But like I didn't know in Malta you had so many events linked to the food and the wine and such a strong culture for food. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. So all of these events that happen, again, there's the food present. And what's really fun is that there's versions of the international wine festivals, but there's also local wine festivals, which are organized specifically from the wineries that opened in Malta and have been in Malta, since the beginning of the 1900s. For example, the Monte Cristo and the Delicata Wine Festival. So they really get to show off, the best wine that we have.
So do you prefer like white wine, red wine, or sparkling wine from Malta? What's your favorite Maltese wine?
My favorite Maltese wine would be a nice white wine, a nice dry white wine, just because I think it goes with a lot of the things that we have in Malta in terms of food. Especially on that note, one food that I didn't mention, which is very heavy on the Maltese white dry wine, is the rabbit. So it's similar to, again, a lot of island regions in Italy, and it's also important because the rabbit is something that was hunted locally. Again, it's a local dish, it's a local ingredient.
Oh my God, it's like Mantelleria.
Yes,
the rabbit. Oh, I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's very similar. And this specific way that we cook it, there's 2 different ways, but one of them, it's fried in a dry white wine. So even before you're eating it and enjoying it with a glass of wine, it's even cooked in the wine, which really gets those flavors, and really gets those rich, deep flavors. The other way of cooking it is more Maltese, I would say. It's very rich. It's cooked in a tomato sauce with a bunch of vegetables. So, the carrots, the peas, the potatoes, and this, nice red sauce, and you let it slow cook and it just melts and becomes really tender by the end of it. But yeah, so for me personally, I would say a nice white wine. However, especially, being in Bologna, then my favorite wine really came to be a Pignoletto,
Okay.
the white sparkling wine, which was so nice, especially, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I would really enjoy it with a platter, for example.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the nice cheeses, and the sommelier there or the person at the restaurant would give us, appropriate cheeses and meats to go with it. And I would always enjoy that. I feel even the platters, the charcuterie boards are a very Maltese way of eating. Just doing a full spread of things on the table from meats, cheeses, bread, and just picking and everything and matching everything with the wine and with the food and really just enjoying yourself.
It's also so Italian. I mean, we are so close. That's amazing. So, like, if someone goes there, it feels like home, literally. Of course, there are some differences because there's the local interpretation of the cuisine, and of course, the winemaking is different. But I mean, you basically enjoy the same stuff we enjoy here in Italy, living la bella vita, la dolce vita. So, oh my God, George, I found out so many interesting and cool stuff about you and about Malta today. So I just got one last question for you before we wrap up the episode. What's your favorite food and wine pairing? Talking about Maltese food and Italian wine.
Ooh, okay. My favorite wine pairing would be a nice, so pasta, because that's my favorite dish in general. Specifically the ravioli, but the ravioli how they're made in Malta. So they're made with a nice tomato sauce, this, sweet kind of marinara sauce with the basil, with the garlic. And then the ravioli or raviul in Malta would be filled with this gozo cheese. So the cheeselets, the jbena that we mentioned before, and it will be the fresh kind. So it will be quite similar to ricotta, but not as salty. And then to pair with it, a nice dry white wine, since it's very sweet, to cut that sweetness a bit of the ravioli, of the tomatoes, of the cheese as well. And I think that's how I would enjoy it the most.
So you have any favorite white wine, dry, fresh white wine?
So I think my go-to would be the Timorasse. And so it's a dry white wine, but it's very fresh and has the nice floral, the complex floral and fruity notes in it, which I think would really clean up my mouth, after such a rich dish with all the tomato and the cheese and, the heaviness of the pasta.
Oh my God, I'm so impressed. You've been here for just a month now and you're talking about Timorasso. My God, George, you're gonna be such an expert after your internship here and staying in Italy. Oh my God, I'm so impressed.
I know, the company has really started to rub off on me in the best way. From all the people here especially, I've really been learning a lot and I become interested in it, in all the wines that there is. And since food has always been very close to my heart, learning how I can get the best out of that food by pairing with a really nice wine that would elevate the wine and the food. Exactly. I think that's something that I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah, you get a complete experience. So, well, you look so fit. So, it means that good food, good wine, good people makes you happy and makes you live a good life staying fit. So, a glass of wine paired with a right meal is always a good idea, right?
It's all in the balance.
And then go to the gym, to George's dad, to work out and stay fit. So, George, thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Apart from asking anyone who's listening to come to Malta and taste all our delicious foods, from such a small island, I don't think there's much else.
Nice. So, George, thank you so much. It was really a huge pleasure to have you as guest. Well, thank you so much also to all the listeners. Please put Malta on your bucket list of the places to visit. Please remember to tune in next Sunday for a new episode of The Next Generation. Ciao a tutti. Bye bye.
Ciao.
Grazie for being with me today and listening to The Next Generation on the Italian Wine Podcast. Alla prossima. Cin cin!